innate unawareness means unmindfulness and distraction. Imputing unawareness means dualistic thoughts towards self and others. So the cause of ignorance, the cause of samsara, which is ignorance, is twofold. It is innate ignorance and imputing ignorance. The innate ignorance, in actuality, is nowhere separated from the mind itself. It is simply that that clear knowing capacity has not arisen. One has not recognized the nature of the mind as it is. Like a butter lamp that is on fire is self-illuminating in the same way. One's own intrinsic awareness is self-knowing and self-illuminating, and that has not arisen. So that leads to not recognizing the nature of one's own mind. Like Rinpoche has said, yesterday we said there's the way he saw the difference between consciousness and wisdom. In actuality, that wisdom is nothing but this clear knowing capacity, the most ordinary consciousness. So if you look inward at the nature of this most ordinary consciousness, it will become just clear and empty, a union of clarity and emptiness. Ordinary people will have doubts about that, not understanding it. But if you have no doubts, if you let go of doubts and directly look at that nature, it will become emptiness, and you will see there is a clear knowing capacity within that emptiness, and that is the union of clarity and emptiness. So this ignorance, in actuality, and what we call ignorance, does not exist anywhere separate from the mind itself. It itself refers to the nature of the mind. But there is a temporary unawareness, a non-recognition of mind's nature. It is just like a piece of gold that is always remaining the same, and sometimes due to some external conditions the color is slightly obscured, it slightly changes. But yet the nature of the gold always remains one and the same. So this unawareness therefore never is separated from the mind itself. It always remains non-dually from the mind. It is only a temporary non-recognition of mind's nature. So if in brief you look inside this most ordinary consciousness directly, it will become emptiness and utterly clear, a union of clarity and emptiness. And so from within that state there is nothing to be seen, and there is nobody who is doing the seeing. There is no seer. It is a state of non-dual wisdom. So the innate ignorance is failing to recognize this nature. One is in a state of unawareness, like we said yesterday, a fainting state. Free. There is no heedfulness. One is free from any mindfulness. Then one does not recognize any thoughts that arise within the mind. It is a neutral state that is heedless. And then there is the imputing ignorance that arises from this innate ignorance. And from this innate ignorance arises the thought of I am, the thought of a self. So if there's a self arising, then also others arise. And this dualistic fixation to self and others is called the imputing ignorance. So from within this initial dualistic turn of mind of self and others, everything in samsara appears in a dual manner, and one begins to grasp at the duality of phenomena. Then it says both kinds of unawareness are the basis for the delusion of all beings. All sentient beings have given rise to this dualistic turn of mind and begin to grasp at its reality. So temporarily, sentient beings grasp at the reality of the thoughts that arise within their minds, and in this way, samsara comes into being.
There is 하지가요 보는 저 코르셈지 탑제제 재미 특범을 봐상 니스도 몇시 봐당 그거랑 없이 봐서서 그리 고도당 공을 특히 뭐라나 때문에 방법 재미 특범을 봐상 되고서 저도 밤에 리시 봐 오래 스목 특성을 근데 sem싸움이 봐야 sem싸움이 봐지가니 pero sem sarta masani par chepar kare jede da pape 이 곡들이니까 빨리 sem sawayo mare jnang mara chi lapsang chi sawa chapchin 지 lapsang sem sawayo 띠까be sem sawo 되는 거 sem sawayo 띠까be 다지 sem sawo 띠노라 이 쳤다겠다나 니스도 시바 당송 sem sawo 띠는 딱 깼다나 그리 sem sawo 호랑어들이 저바 강철한테 저바티 우ပေါ်点把出来这把的우ပေါ်这把的有嘛这了的呢是挂上我写说呢这大的都嘛他不是这他这干的大的你或者你得到被加起过的差有了这龙倒是挂了的呢生路就拿就先去他们当包的了怕带上去你这个让你的怕你这让就没大把的了怕저는 그때 남주 생긴 당시 가자 찍었다. 그때 적들었다. 가자 적었다. 들다렸다. 들이 이 시람이 보러 빠네 되나. 다 가자 적이 가자 찍었다. 적들 메리트. 대 말입니다. 보러. 다 세비. 새로 딱 깨들. 라면서 내로 쳤다 깨다나. 이 용이 딱신 타졌다. 선 나가다가 자도 오, 늦게 딱게 나와 셀프 타지. 나와 셀프 타지. 서로 죽는데 점수를 내게 적히고. 이진이라. 남께 생기다. 점수를 내다 뉴모 말했더니 노아도 소리 저거 되는 오. 제가 가자적을 누르도록 오 소리 샘 루드 샘비즈도. 바시 파마도 남치들이고 동반이 되나? 나디지 차다가 또 빠지. 라반도 차도 빠지. 딱 로아를 그랬더니 루데 하고 셀프즈야 느끼니까 셀프즈 봐대 하고 느끼니까 우리 셀프즈야 내가 다 랑거 셀프 딱 했다고 그랬더니 그때 내로 탑지 랑거 셀프 셀프즈야 갔다 공에서 보니 예측 해서 뒤 내로 배우다가 또 섭도성 쪽도 그요래 맨날 이제서도 시바 땅 줬더니 이스도 덴바르디 사서 꼭 맞아빠대. 당 로다를 빼대나 판나. 드네 데레 샤로도 또 빠대라. 샤로도 또 빠대. 너무 데디지 샤요고. 디디 샤네. 오, 디디 샤와데. 되고 뭐 열매나. 디디 샤로 디디 샤도요. 디 jet솔라드니다. 나와서 말람다 어서. 말람다 어더니 줄람들이야. 주마다한테 사초서 줘봐. 딱 따와서 줘봐니 송주 치고 따라대서 갖고 이래 때문에 돌을 좀 왔다 그래서 디디메가 저 줄람지 감 좀 왔다 줄람 송 무슨 말하면 내가 제가 배대다가 드리데 있어도 시바 당 바람 시바 어서 지금이 있어도 시바데 샤르구나 들이 라고 세고 내로 잡는 옷이로 내로 떠나 되라 디디 시도 내가 인상부터 봐서 좀 많이 있어부터 봐. 있어도 봐 시바 요 말배나. 서로 봐라 서로 내용 그거 용기나. 봐라 뭐 시바 그거.
So I was just asked to speak a little bit slower. Through Kuntuzangpo's prayer, may all you beings wandering in samsara clear away the dark fog of unmindfulness, clear away the clinging clouds of duality, may you recognize your own intrinsic awareness. So through Kuntuzangpo's prayer, depending on Kuntuzangpo's prayer, the dark fog of unmindfulness is cleared away, and it is cleared away through regaining mindfulness. So when we talk about unmindfulness, that is a state of mental thinking, a lack of clarity, sleepiness, and so forth. So from within such a state of sleepiness, we fail to recognize mind's nature. So what is the difference between mental clarity and unclarity, an unclear state? When the mind is unclear, we become very sleepy. We become very, we lack that clarity, the mind thinks. And then, for example, when something happens suddenly, like fear arises, then immediately the mind will be revived. Very, very quickly the mind will be clear again. So that marks the difference between the clear and the unclear mind. So then when this clarity is regained, then look at the nature of this clear mind, investigate its nature. When you look at it directly, all dualistic fixation will be cleared away in an instant. And when you look at its nature, it will become very clear, and whatever arises, there will be no fixation, there will be no belief in the reality of whatever arises. When one recognizes one's own face, one recognizes one's own intrinsic awareness, one sees the vastness of the entire universe and the vastness of sentient beings, the vastness of samsara, with sentient beings who have not realized this state. And so first, depending on the logical reasoning, one investigates these sentient beings and the universe. So when one first investigates the external universe, one comes to the understanding that the universe is a compounded phenomenon. If it is a compounded phenomenon, it is in the nature of impermanence. Then one looks inward at the sentient beings, at one single person, for example. One looks for the self, for any true existence. So where does this exist? It cannot set to exist within the body, as it is said in the Heart Sutra. So the person cannot set to be the body. Then one investigates and tries to find the person within the mind. If you look within the mind, you will find that it is beyond existence and non-existence. There is nothing to be found within the mind. It is beyond the four extremes, so it abides like the expanse of the sky, nothing to be found whatsoever. So then one recognizes that the entire universe and its contents, the sentient beings, everything that appears has been created by this mind. So the basis lies within this mind. And the external universe, that is the place where all the sentient beings live, has been established due to the collective karmas that were created by the minds of those sentient beings, created by their dualistic fixation, by their karmas and afflictive emotions. The sentient beings have created the 6 realms of samsara. So if you look into the consciousness of one single person, without the body, for example, a consciousness in the parallel state, depending on the afflictive thoughts of attachment, aversion, and in particular attachment, one takes on another incarnation anywhere in the 6 realms of samsara. Again, the mind has established a body. So in this way we can understand how the mind established creates a body. And so we can come to the conclusion that the entire external universe and the sentient beings are created by the mind itself. If you then investigate the mind inside, your own mind inside, then you will come to the conclusion that this very mind and the basis of all of samsara and nirvana are one and the same. So all of samsara and nirvana has been created by this mind. Then you look at this mind again and again, you habituate this state, and gradually all dualistic fixation will be dispelled, and you actualize that nothing whatsoever possesses any true external existence. So in the beginning, sentient beings engage in the belief in their reality. So if you understand that everything is created by this mind, then this belief in reality will be destroyed, it will diminish, and everything in this world will appear to you just like a dream, lacking any true existence. And then also, not just the appearances, but all the activities that you engage in this world will appear illusion-like, and these are the illusion-like enlightened deeds of the bodhisattvas. It is a union of the view and the conduct. Everything in brief appears to be like an illusion. Like in your dream, you engage in all sorts of different actions. So in the same way, in this life which lacks the inherent existence, everything you do becomes dreamlike. So through this understanding, the belief in the reality of the external universe will be diminished. The belief in its reality and also the fixation to its non-existence will be destroyed if you look inside and recognize your own intrinsic awareness.
니지 로네 태촌데 니지 시바데디 태촌레 신바 참모 지발레 박차도 보름지데서 다다 다지 있을 줄 봤다 서 여러분 이 다지 있을 줄 봐야 마음 생각 넘버 또 봐지 넘버 또 봐지 즉처럼 빼나 신바 참모 지발레 빼는 것이 감제양, 족, 매도양, 감제 너무가 가능식들이나 람당 대 롱규법 가면 빼는 가라 정보도 적잖아. 정보도 찍어. 정보면서 진짜 봐. 차오도 기억이 요. 정보 진짜 차오도 기봐 되나? 대 정보 더 상들이 양다양들이 신바 참모지나. 때려 박차도 보름지 되지 신바들이 체르들이 뭐막 요걸 넘기지 깨고 신바들 체르도 오래 뭐마지나 대지들이 박차도 보름지 돼서 때려들이 다 집아들은 나오 해봐들이 대화를 보고 대화를 찾고요 동네를 당겨요 자당이 들어가기 같으니 박차도 보들 저처럼 잡아주더니 저런 영화를 해주는 속도로 박차도 보를 됐어. 제가 다다 신바 참고 집안에 새로 봐. 진시구나. 신바 참고 집안 속도로 완전 들어가셔. 랍상 되시겠잖아. 내배 집맞게 마음을 집에 시바란 거 소송은 신바한테 따라는 이런 말이야. 아래나 그래놓고 롱 누구가 강롱제를 드시고서는 롱장제 좋고요, 롱장제 좋고요. 때 신바매가 요나 좋으면 안 돼. 신바제에서는 다 같이 참고를, 다 같이 탐하시더니 나타도 탐하려고 셔요리 셔라야들이 다 가능한 소리다. 저 신바제는 드리려. 데르진 코아시바데 다원 좀봐줘. 신바제를 드리. 땅코가 저거 해야지. 박차도 보름지 돼서. 내가 뒤에 박차도 보름지 되라. 되게 세상 거다 내다 꼭 도용하다 사번이 영 첩도 배동. 신바 참어도 지를 걸 맞춰놨더니 다다다 참아도 용하다. 내가 송바라지. 되게 차네 신네. 되게 그거 되게 생각도 다 고발. 힘이 젖대를 해서 도착.
Dualistic thoughts create doubt from subtle attachment to this dualistic turn of mind. Dualistic tendencies become stronger and thicker. So basically, the dualistic thoughts themselves are doubt. In the beginning, we project outward and we grasp at external objects. And we grasp at self and others. We grasp at the reality of self and others. And inside, we grasp at the thoughts and afflictive emotions that arise. So this grasping begins on a very subtle level. There's a very subtle clinging for example, towards food or any other of the 5 desirables of the senses. For example, when we enjoy food that tastes very nice, then there will be a slight grasping at the nice taste of the food or the unpleasant taste of the food. But this subtle grasping, thinking, oh, this tastes nice, then one again and again continues to think about that, and this subtle grasping turns into a clinging mind. And that clinging mind forms a habitual pattern. It forms a propensity that lies an imprint within the mind. So through this subtle grasping, a clinging mind is established and is created. It is just like slowly a sprout is growing into a flower if one fails to recognize it. So if one fails to recognize the subtle fixation, it will turn into a thick karmic propensity, a habitual pattern. It all begins with the initial grasping at the self, thinking of I am. Then there is a fixation and attachment to the self, and an aversion against the other. And so this grasping at the self and the aversion against the others forms an ever-increasing propensity that lays an imprint within the mind gradually. So it all begins with this subtle grasping, fixation, but if one recognizes that fixation as it arises through mindful awareness, then one will dispel any further clinging and fixation. On the other hand, if one fails to recognize that, one will form a strong habitual pattern. So with mindful awareness, one recognizes, I have become attached to something. Then one does not engage in any thoughts of the past. One does not anticipate the future, but at the present moment, one recognizes that this clinging fixation will lead to a strong propensity in the future. If that is recognized through mindful awareness, there is nothing wrong with enjoying any of the sense pleasures, for as long as one doesn't get attached to them. That means whether they are here or not, it doesn't make a difference, as there is no attachment within the mind. Some other people cannot let go of their attachments. They begin to drink alcohol or smoke cigarettes, and then they know it creates a great illness for them, and knowing that still they cannot let go of it. They still crave the cigarette or the alcohol. And that clinging and fixation, which has become a very strong habit, that is the very cause of samsara. So in this way, starting with a subtle fixation up until a strong craving, samsara comes into existence. So gradually, the propensities, the habits become thicker and stronger. So then it continues. Food, wealth, clothes, home, and friends, the 5 objects of the senses, and your beloved family, all these things cause torment by creating longing and desire. These are all worldly delusions. The activities of grasping and clinging are endless. So when we fixate, starting with a subtle fixation, then mainly it refers to attachment. We start with a subtle fixation, and then we begin to cling, we begin to crave. And this very craving, this very attachment, that is the cause of samsara.
용 착바 되게 너 착바디 중을 졌다 그래. 다다 소소라나 그 쌈마다나. 야. 사실은 소디 하장 도로라 가와요. 도로야 붙들어 도로 하장 가와 찍으면 좋니 성금이 좋지. 가봐 도로 강대에 당 도로냐고요. 힘이 쭉 되다 그래요. 그 사진 좀 되게 가서 다 이제 말하면 하죠. 내용으로 좀 답지. 하장 장탈 말하. 하장 메탈 말이니까. 땅놈 저때나 도로는 누구 적성을 야. 도로 하장이 하나 다 되더라고. 딱 지금 강화 차나 되더라고. 샘이 쪼까 잡고요. 야. 르보치 아침으로 누피지면 대 샘을 제만하게 대 샘을 대화를 줬고요. 나 죽지 않고지 요사 대화라고 요래. 너는 이 대화에 동의기 지어래. 센터서 강의는 센터라야 돼. 오야 라야 니가 대 동의기 지어래. 지야 서말라 대 차서 샘도 강나 차나 가셔들이 지왕이 발람들이 그래서 막막을 주더니 빼요라 봐. 산지 잘 죽는 거 같아. 뭐 종종 랑그 속도 빼지 뭘 놓봤대. 나 속도 빼지 보이. 랑그 속도 차네. 시선하더니 납시도 저렇게 뛰어와라는 로감들이 뛰어와라 소들이 해야 요래. 하나 차라더니 세제 대답은 친구 요래. 세제 친구 요래. 때렸더니 영 첫번 뒤에 동세. 차선도 중대 중심부 대답을 요래. 이거 보이는 좀 맞아봐나. 또 하자야 보여면 또 보여면 제 착해 오면 또 맞아라 제를 봐. 중에 되고 센라에 오면 제담 차라들 센라도 또 얘기를 하지. 다다 솔리 대답을 가디는 센터 친구고 답에다가는 당을 실어 잡부조다 대리샤 잡부 잡아 제답 실어 되게 저는 내 방향에서 같이 한 보통 중간에 잡아요. 하장 잡았지는 다 보통 중간에 내 방향으로 해. 야, 너 차대 남자들이 해당 맞이에 차도 아무데나 이거 연구를 해. 저들이 차도 차도 때는 해당 제거요. 저들은 좀 사람은 저바 잡고요. 영 또 얘기했죠. 야, 지와 될 변화도 한 지와 치고요. 대님아들 호조도 차도 호조도 손 들이 지와 서만도 자삼지 대표 용어로 와. 나뭐 지와 제담 요바도 나뭐 지와 치고 들이 대니들 이거 방송 호조도 손 들이 해당 호조 지와 치다는 거 호조는 들이 지와 서만도 자삼지 랑게 제위 이로 하장 지와 치료를 탑니다. 마음 받아들이 이를 들이 자는 적고요. 들이 때 자라시 당계사 매서 이제도 자꾸 주래서 자꾸들이 힘이 좋으셔서 하구나. 그니 다 종대다고 전화들이 라게 자꾸하는 문제를 배도 영차번도 배 동지 대단히 띵출바데 좀 딜레라 센타베 다더니 호와도 자와가는도 잘 신발에 정도리 좀 딜레 센타메바 대다 레가레서나 대 양절량 되어 대도 메요고 요래 도착하지 생각이 요래
So it says that all those things cause torment by creating longing and desire. If you think about it for yourself, think about the attachment. For example, somebody who likes clothing very much, likes to buy clothes very much. Then one pair of clothing is not enough. One needs a second pair or third pair or even more until the entire house is filled with clothes, and still one continues to buy clothing. It will never be enough. So that is a clear example of the fault of this craving and grasping. And the Buddha has said, do not fall into any of the two extremes. So when you enjoy the five sense pleasures, then they should neither be too nice, and there should not be a too strong attachment, and also there should not be too bad. One should not deprive oneself. One should just go sort of at the middle way. So the same is true for clothing. The example with clothing. One doesn't need to buy the very best and the most of the clothing, but just as much as one needs in moderation. Or for example, when you buy a very nice and precious jeweled ring, and then you have this ring and you think, oh, you feel very happy because you think, oh, now I have this ring. So it gives you some sort of the gratification. You feel very happy about this ring. And actually, when you really look into the nature of this happiness, this gratification with the ring, it actually is the cause for suffering. Then later on, you will foster, you will nurture this attachment more and more, and in future lifetimes you will continue to attach and cling and crave, and therefore will take on an inferior incarnation. There was a story a long time ago of a very beautiful girl, and she was always looking into the mirror and thought, how beautiful am I? So she was very pleased with her appearance, and then after she died, her consciousness took rebirth as a snake, and that snake was attached to the body still, so the snake then was traveling, was kind of living in the corpse of the girl. So such an incarnation one takes if one's attachment is very strong. And so this attachment binds one's mind, and this attachment is endless. If there is no fixation, no craving, then one doesn't make a big distinction in terms of clothing, for example, or this is good or this is bad. One doesn't have much concern about it. One lives in moderation. To whatever extent one craves, to the same extent one will experience suffering. When one craves and clings to whatever thing, that clinging and craving will obscure the nature of mind. It will bind one like a rope. So contemplating that, you should think, these are the faults of clinging and fixation. And so especially fixation is extremely harmful. When you think about even people that we fixate on, like one's own children or husband and wives, if the clinging and fixation is too strong, then those husbands, wives, and children actually will become very harmful. First, there is an attachment, and then from that attachment, all the other afflictive emotions arise: anger, jealousy, pride, and so forth. So especially from attachments, there arises jealousy, and then from jealousy arises anger, and that will be the cause for disharmony, the cause for all suffering. And then in the next lifetime, this love has changed into anger, and in the next lifetime, that person will arise as an enemy. This is where all the enemies come from. In a previous lifetime, they have been someone who has been extremely kind to us, somebody that we loved very much. And then due to some outer condition that has changed into anger, the love has transformed into anger, and in a future lifetime, that same person, as a karmic creditor, arises as an enemy. So all the enemies have their source in a person who has been extremely loving and kind to one, and that then has transformed into anger. So these are the faults of attaching and clinging and fixation. And there are great benefits of recognizing one's own clinging and fixation. As it is said, those clinging and fixation cause great torment for sentient beings. So then it says, these are all worldly delusions. The activities of grasping and clinging are endless. They are endless and turn continuously. There is an attachment, then there is craving, then we engage in action, we form a karma, we experience its result, and that continues on. Mainly from attachment, the afflictive emotion arising from that is a greed, like a stinginess.
근데 나나서 냠용이 거래 주로 인과탐지 하람 뭐라 그래 빼는서 파연 라바토 보지 빼마시고 저쪽 다 쳐보자 남고 대강 때 당부 빼 가서 이다 나 저쪽이라면도 자 나제랑 지 그래서 뭐니 그 저쪽들 라로서 빼서 빠나지 이런데 또 왜래 들이라고 따블라만 그래 대지서 양 시간을 때문에 promo지가 저쪽에 마시 봐야 저쪽 자체보죠. 그래서 박대가 다들 미다 자체보죠. 야보 같이 저쪽 자체사면도 저쪽 네 로마들 저쪽에 배받치 뭐 샘진 탐진 배럭을 남 저쪽 유니체당 로마 대당 것은 별절이 괜히 좀 다다 랑 이거를 팽게 되고 라야 다지미거든요. 나가 주토 탭다는 거죠. 그때도 잘라 다치 보지 생 무슨 넣고도 라나. 주로 탐지는 대다가 되는 랑게 강나 신바요바 대 유통 좀 가담 보면 좀 좋지 뭐. 가리를 신바요로 대 대로 동 거에 내가 볼까 대야 한 벌고. 만나들 다지를 피고 고조선을 풀어서 들이라도 넘기나. 이거요 맞더니